Thank you very much. And for anyone that has a previous edition of the program, I want to warn you, I'm not Sanjeev Chopra, obviously, but I've stepped in, and I'm delighted to step in this case, to be introducing Vladimir Zaitsev and to be talking about Nicholas Roerich. I've been an admirer of Nicholas Roerich's works for most of my life. And I visited, of course, the museum in Manali as well as the museum in Manhattan and admired his work. Roerich, I think, is one of the Himalayan artists. He's the foremost Himalayan artist, at least in the modern period, I would say, and able to not only convey this spectacular landscape, these wonderful mountains, whether it's Kanchenjunga, whether it's Spiti, Ladakh, or the mountains in Himachal Pradesh, but he also conveys some of the mystical sense that we have in the mountains, that sense of awe and spiritual reverence that the mountains themselves evoke. And I'm looking forward very much to hearing from Vladimir his perspectives. He is a renowned art historian and has written a number of papers and books on Roerich. I don't think we could have a more celebrated expert on Roerich today. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, Vladimir, and I'll hand it over to you at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction, for your kind words. Just before I start my presentation, I would like to say a few words that it's a privilege for me to be as a writer here, as an author. One of my books is going to come soon from the National Gallery of Modern Art. The book is related to, I will show you at the end of my presentation, the book is related to Roerich's collection in India, the history of his collections. Roerich is, as it was mentioned already, he is one of the 9 masters of Indian art. So before I would like to ask to start presentation, please. Yeah, my subject is Roerich, Himalayan Vistas. Before we start talking about the Roerich's vision of the Himalayas, the topic is very wide. So I would like to give just a little historical retrospective how the Himalayas were perceived during the British Raj. From the sacred to secular, with your permission, I will be reading and I will be commenting also. From the sacred to secular, while the mountains were traditionally viewed as a sacred space in Hinduism and Buddhism, the British perspective introduced a political, secular, and scientific lens. Documentation and visuals. Photographers like Samuel Bourne and Vittoria Sella produced some of the earliest images of the Himalayas, compiling albums for audience back in Britain and Europe, contributing to romanticize picturesque image of the region as an exotic borderland in Western imagination. As you could see on the left side, there is early view of Kanchenjunga by Vittoria Sella. Last year, we have a beautiful exhibition from his personal archive organized in Delhi. It was I think he's a remarkable photographer in the way that he reproduced earliest images of Kanchenjunga. He traveled himself on the high altitude and clicked images as early as 1901 and in second expedition in 1910. British relationship with the Himalayas during the Raj was a complex interplay of imperial ambition, scientific curiosity, and strategic necessity and desire for social and climatic escape. In aesthetic terms, the British picturesque landscape of India were portrayed through a lens of colonialism, and paintings of the Himalayas were referred to a colonial narrative of the mountains. Saying that, we still cannot acknowledge the contribution made by European and artists and first explorers of the Himalayas. It's interesting, we see here on the left side the earliest lithograph from, it's a Hudson lithograph, and it's published in 1854. I think it was reproduced in a book in 2 volumes of Himalayan journals by Edward Hooke's travel in Sikkim. So interesting how the past connected with the present and future. We just discussed that with Stephen. So the painting, what you see, was in the Roerich room in his family estate when he was a child, the Hudson Himalaya. Interesting that 50 years after he came to the same spot and painted the beautiful Kanchenjunga. Another painting, what you see on your right side with the jungle, a lot of greenery, it's a oil painting from the British Museum collection by Edward Lear, the famous traveler. He's an illustrator, painter. He was asked by one of the viceroys to paint painting on the topic, on Indian topic. So he traveled to Darjeeling and saw the beautiful Kanchenjunga. So he, again, Roerich was born in 1874, and Edward Lear started his painting in 1874, which he completed in 3 years' time. This is, I find, kind of interesting relationship also and connectivity, the present, the past, present, and future. So there are a few books by William Daniel, The View of the Himalayas. You see how differently it was perceived. According to Kumaraswamy, British artists could never fully appreciate India on its own terms, as they view and understood it largely as a curiosity. The depiction of Indian sites and people in images were attempted in a manner that addressed the idea of Britons as the rulers of India. Even the gaze of travelers to other parts of India was a surveillance and had an eye for taking possession. The Bengal Renaissance and new avant-garde movement transformed Indian art by bringing Swadeshi values to Indian painting, led by reformers and artists like A.B. Havel, Abhinavranth Tagore, O.C. Ganguly, Nandalal Bose in Bengal School of Art originated in erstwhile Calcutta and Shantiniketan, but spread across the country as a voice against Western influence. I must say that Nandalal Bose, when he came to know, I met some of his students. Interesting that when he came to know that Roerich settled in Kulu, in the Himalayas, he said that you have to his students, you have to travel to pay pilgrimage to the great artist, and it will be your also artistic experience to learn something in the Roerich studio. So, Roerich arrival in the country coincided with the period of national cultural revival, as I mentioned. His call for the protection of cultural monuments and artistic treasure found enthusiastic response amongst country artists and intellectuals. I should say that the Roerich intention was that to build also cultural infrastructure along with the Indian intellectuals. He thought that the culture could spread international message and could connect the people through the art, through intellectual platform like we have probably during the festival. The people can be close, they can understand each other better. To Roerich, the Himalayas were not merely a beautiful and exotic landform. Rather, he saw in them manifestation of abode of gods, a sacred place and shrine of nature filled with 1,000 years tradition, all historical and spiritual traditions. The mountain kingdom of the Himalayas captivated artist's vision in the following years of his life in India. The genre of mountain landscape became inseparable attribute of Roerich's art. Almost like in Vedic hymns, the words of artists resound in his book, Himalayas, Abode of Light. Himalayas, here is the abode of rishis. Here is the Shambhala. Here resounded the sacred flute of Krishna. Here proclaimed the blessed Buddha, Gautama Buddha. Here originated all Vedas. Here lived Pandavas. Here Gesar Khan. Here Aryavarta. Himalayas, jewels of India, Himalayas, treasures of the world. Interesting that Roerich used also Tibetan icon painting, Tibetan tanka, as a background for his future painting. And it's probably interesting experiment he did, that he combined elements of icon painting with a traditional icon painting with the methods and forms of European school of art, with the European approach. So in one of your book, I have seen this reference about Alexander David Neil, where the people, the Tibetan monks, in a state of trance, they walk as messengers at very fast speed across the Himalayan region. So this also painting reminds me of that story. Of course, the painting also shows the human who could be that monk who walk bare feet on the snow. And being on such altitude, it's almost impossible. Whoever travels in the Himalayas knows that how harsh condition and how cold it could be, bitter cold, frost, and avalanches, all kinds of obstacles.
I think we all wish we could climb and run from mountain to the next, just like the monks there, though it's obviously far more arduous.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. We will do it in our spirit. In one of the conversation of Roerich with a famous Lama, Toma Geshe Rinpoche, whom he met in Darjeeling. He spoke that Lama was wondering why European climbers take so much difficulties and trials to reach mountain peaks. They can travel in subtle bodies through the power of spirit. We see a remarkable example of Roerich, Kanchenjunga. He did numerous studies, and probably we can call him really as a poet of Kanchenjunga, because there are numerous paintings on the same subject. I know that there are artists like O.C. Ganguly from Calcutta, who was a member also and founder member of Oriental Society for Oriental Art. He also, it was one of his favorite subjects. But the way how Roerich treated, he probably discovered a new way of seeing the Himalayas for Indian artists. And for him, I should say also that where this location, because this kind of view we can see from Darjeeling station. The Darjeeling, when pre-monsoon or post-monsoon season, we can see clear images, especially if we're going to Tiger Hill, where we have spectacular sunrises, and it's amazing that how Stephen, as an expert on the Himalayas, you could also prove, and any photographer who travel, artist, you could see how incredible Himalayas could be, from rosy flowers to lotus, and you could find comparison only with the precious stones, how the colors are changing, from emerald to pink, all kind of gradation. And Roerich depicted Kanchenjunga in several times. I must say about a few words about the Darjeeling, from where they're painting. The Darjeeling is not only a beautiful, picturesque place, but it's also cultural and historical hub. There are so many names like James Hooker, which I mentioned there. So Brian Hodgson, Hungarian Tibetan scholar, Choma Dokores. There is a grave in Darjeeling of Choma Dokores. There is a grave of Sister Nivedita, disciple of Swami Vivekananda. Dr. Evan Swens was working with Lama Mingyur Dorje on translation of Tibetan Book of Dead. So Dr. Sherbatsky, one of the pillar Sanskritologists, one of the pillars in Sanskrit studies. He visited and stayed in Darjeeling. Tashi Lama, also when he fled Tibet, I think it's a period of 1910, so he stayed in Darjeeling. And interesting that Roerich found when he came in Sikkim and ultimately stayed and worked in Darjeeling, he stayed in the same house where the name of the place is called Talai Phobrang in Tibetan. So it's also the place where the pilgrimage takes place. It's quite incredible. Lama Nagarika Govinda, the famous German explorer, the Buddhist monk, he studied his book, The Way of White Clouds, in Darjeeling itself. So the Darjeeling is such incredible space for not only for the beauty, but also for historical retrospective introspection. Yeah, if we look at that. So.
Well, it's also home to Tenzing Norgay and all of the Sherpas who climbed throughout the Himalayan, but particularly the early Everest expeditions that went through through Darjeeling to the north face there. So all of the great climbing Sherpas, Ang Tharke, Tenzing Norgay, they all came from Darjeeling.
I want to say this is the painting from Allahabad Museum. It was shown during the Roerich exhibition last year in New Delhi, which we organized with along with the National Gallery of Modern Art. It's called Ecstasy. We see the Rishi, who is in ecstasy, stretching his hands towards the light. So I want to quote one of the writings of Roerich. Where can one have such a joy as when the sun is upon the Himalayas, when the blue is more intense than sapphires, when from far distance a glacier glitter as incomparable gems. All religions, all teachings are synthesized in the Himalayas. Are not the shining stars nearer when you are in the Himalayas? For Roerich, contemplating the mountain landscape was not just admiring the beauties of nature. It corresponded to his inner aspiration of deep penetration into nature. Like the old Chinese landscape painters who combined deep philosophy with amazing visual arts and sense of nature, the artist lives in the mountain world in a true sense of the world. He observes in all hours of day and night and depicts it on his canvases. It's interesting that one of the Roerich contemporary art historian, Barnett de Conlan, said that Roerich painted the Himalayas in unprecedented scale. He produced, when he traveled in Sikkim and then moved to Ladakh region, he started producing series of work dedicated to the Himalayas. What surprised me when you read the Roerich's diaries, when you read his traveling traveling books, it's a sense of inspiration and sense of knowledge. He came not as a foreigner, but as a person who lived in India for ages, because he easily speaks about the Shiv and how Lakshmi descends from the sky, and all that in the landscape of the Himalayas. So it's quite, one should read the Roerich before traveling to the Himalayas also. In 1926, I want to mention about interesting book, Brentana, a New York publisher. They publish a work, it's an antique, now it's an antiquity book, The Himalayas. It's a limited edition, 500 copies. So this is the Roerich expedition, which he started right from Ladakh and led through Srinagar to Leh. Expedition route passed through Ladakh, China, Russia, Siberia, Altai, Mongolia, Tibet, and explored regions of Trans-Himalaya. The expedition lasted from 1924 till 1928. Officially, expedition was conducted under American flag. And in fact, many materials which were collected were sent to New York, where New York ultimately became the first platform where from where expedition was organized. It was sponsored by the government of United States. It was sponsored by also philanthropists, but American was the expedition was conducted under American flag, and all species, artifacts, paintings were sent back to United States, where they received a great appreciation. And the book in 1924, the book was published. During a prolonged journey, Roerich expedition caravan crossed 35 mountain passes, the highest of which reached 21,000 feet, and faced hardship of Taklamakan Desert and bitter cold of Tibetan plateaus. In Tibet, the expedition was on the brink of survival, as Tibetan authorities had not given expedition permission to proceed further. So the expedition basically got stuck. Roerich was planning to go to Lhasa and then to come back to India. But for different reasons, I found in National Archives of India the paper of Secret Service, British Secret Service. Some of them are still unclassified. You cannot see them. But Roerich was not welcome to India. He was considered as a Bolshevik. They could not understand the officers. When you read the bureaucrats from the British government, you're surprised that they don't understand what is the value of art. They say it's a famous painter who travels in the Himalaya, but we don't know what he's actually doing. Although Roerich's life was quite obvious and open with multiple exhibitions around the world. So ultimately, what happened during the expedition, they stuck for 5 months in a snow captivity on Enchanted Plateau, which is in the winter season. This is basically how the travel takes place, and we see pilgrims crossing the mountain. The same way the expedition travel, and so one of the view of Kanchenjunga. So this is the Tibetan plateau, Chantang. Absolutely, only the snow, landscape, the sky, and snow. So of 110 animals of the caravan, 90 died due to lack of food and starvation. 5 members of expedition died of exhaustion and cold. Despite the harsh condition during the journey, Roerich created over 500 paintings, including his new series of work called Himalayas, Maitreya, Sikkim, His Country, and the Banners of the East. I should say just a few words also how the artists work in the expedition. So it's always challenging because usually artists work on plein air and then they return to studio in a safe space where they finish the work. Roerich method, he worked with the tempera. He did a lot of sketching during the travel. He had an excellent memory. And he reproduced almost with the topographical accuracy, all the landscape, the monastery. The monastery which we see, Kshetragya monastery in Tibet, and one of the monastery in Ladakh. It's all these paintings from collection in India. I deliberately use them just to introduce to Indian collection. So many of these monasteries were destroyed during the Chinese Revolution. And it's interesting that they remain only as witnesses, documentary witnesses, so because they disappear. So we see them only in the painting and archival photographs. And what is interesting how the artists contribute, as Roerich did. The same happened in Russia during the Second World War. The many in European parts of Russia, many churches and monasteries were destroyed, but remain only on his canvases. So this is a beautiful example of Roerich called this. If you travel to Ladakh and Spiti, you will see this kind of structure. They're almost like a bird's nest, just fix it on the slope, and you're always surprised at in how a human being can survive in such harsh environment. In the winter, in the bitter frost, I spoke to one of the doctors who work as a volunteer in Spiti. She said that my medical equipment got damaged during the winter season, just out of the frost, because she said that I will not survive second winter, but people live, and it's always a matter of surprise how the people could survive in the early Middle Ages, when the first, I think the Tabo monastery was found in the 10th century in the Spiti Valley. And then Kashmiri artists travel, you see that Kashmiri touch in those frescoes, beautiful ornaments and colors. We see some here Lahul giants engraved in the stone. So the sacred image of Mahayana Buddhism appeared to the artist as a natural mandala, space filled with years-old mystery. As a visionary and master of mountain landscape, the artist discovered new ways to interpret esoteric symbolism of the East through realistic method and tools of European art in the first part of 20th century. We see the painting Milarepa. Following the artistic tradition of this region, the artist portrays a popular Tibetan hermit poet of 11th century, Milarepa, listening at the dawn to the voices of devas. The half-naked body with a piece of cloth across his shoulder reclines to one side while his right hand is raised near the ear as he is straining to hear a message. The saint is often depicted on the murals and the bronze and the clay sculptures in the same position, holding his hand. I was attending one of the lectures given in Dharamsala by His Holiness some years back. And in one of his lectures, he started crying. I was shocked, as everybody else, what happened. And he was talking about Milarepa, because for Tibetans, Milarepa is something which touched their soul and mind. He was talking about the suffering of Milarepa when he was in solitude in the Himalayas. But it's again, as we talk about the past, how the past can deeply connect you with the present and touch your heart, that it brings such emotions. The figure of soaring Lama in the sky with a white scarf is seen in another Roerich painting, Higher Than the Mountain. Just as Apsara and celestial divinity are depicted in classical masterpieces of Indian art. It's interesting, the same kind of motifs you will find in classical Indian art. In the National Museum in Delhi, we see those beautiful Apsaras flying. So this is where probably Tibetan art also originated, using, of course, there is influence of Tibet, China, and Nepal surrounding neighboring countries, but obviously the India is a foundation because the Sanskrit texts were taken to Tibet, translated in Tibetan. We see another painting, Dorje, who dared to face Mahakala, done by Roerich in Sikkim in 1925. All the landscape reminds me more Ladakhi landscape with the barren mountain. Roerich deliberately chooses stylization of Tibetan Tanka while also combining with element of realistic landscape painting. Tibetan Saint Dorje is shown in this work during a mysterious ceremony using his magic knife Purpa and bell. Lama, in daring the ritual, is attempting to evoke the mighty and frightening deity Mahakala, a wrathful protector of Dharma. Another painting, this is how these are quite rare. They don't come, in fact, one of the Tanka, I have to ask one of the scholar photographer who travel in Ladakh, and because this Tanka you won't see regularly. It's not typical motif. And it's found only in some rare collections where the Dorje is facing Mahakala. The way how we see done in traditional art. Another painting, Nagarjuna, the conqueror of the serpent, was also inspired by Himalayan artistic tradition. and depicted one of the most important Buddhist philosophers, Nagarjuna, founder of Madhyamika school of Mahayana Buddhism. Like in previous painting, Roerich illustrates a very special moment, a moment of revelation of great mystery, beholding a divinity, darshan, where the mortal man perceives ultimate reality in presence of higher being. This is how, again, traditional, how it is. In Himachal Pradesh, when I travel, you find in the temples these elements of Nagas. Nagas are worshipped in the Himalayas. Actually, the Nagas gave Nagarjuna wisdom, and one of Prajna Paramita Sutra were given by Nagas to Nagarjuna, so according to the tradition. So the command of Rigdenjapo, the painting is in Russia, but the similar painting you will find in Chandigarh Museum. He is given a command to his messenger to spread. And this is the way how we see, again, Roerich has sometimes repeated several topics, favorite topics he would choose. But you see how different every time he put up the composition, the color combination. Yeah. So I think he deliberately did that in order to give a feeling of time, of a presence of time and space. Because for any, he was probably the first European artist who gave such artistic retrospective of Asian continent, the deep inside, the Mongolia, the Chinese Turkestan, the remote trans-Himalayan regions. So this is one of the, it's a one painting on your left. It's called The Prophet, the vision, the Prophet Muhammad, the Gabriel, and the painting Santana from, one painting is from collection of Kiran Nadar Museum, and one is from museum in Trivandrum. So for the period of almost 20 years which Roerich spent in India, he created epic panorama of works showing the great Himalayan ranges, distant and remote places in the Central Asia, Mongolia, and Tibet. Roerich's distinctive artistic style and philosophy were characterized by art historian as a Himalayan one. Roerich called as a master of the mountains, enlightened Gurudev. Roerich Himalayas influenced many Indian artists. I should say that there is a stream, new stream of the artists in Indian art who specialize only in the genre of the mountain landscape. We could, as we discussed before the meeting, it's a Bireswar Sen, who was the principal of Lucknow College of Art. There is Krishna Kanwal, who traveled in Tibet after. So the after the Roerich open up the Himalayas from that. So many artists and pilgrims start traveling just to see this, to rediscover the Himalayas. So, and collection, I should say that collection of Nicholas Roerich in India is probably one of the largest. It contains about few hundred paintings. I just can mention few. Allahabad Museum in Kulu, there is museum in Bangalore, Kshetragya Parishad. There are 3 Roerich halls which were founded in 1930 by Maharajas. So one is in Trivandrum Museum, one is in Bharat Kala Bhavan, and one is in Allahabad Museum. It's a name after Roerich. So, and Roerich is a national art treasure. Dr. Kalidas Nag called Roerich as a first Russian ambassador of beauty who brought to India deathless message of art. Thank you so much, and maybe we will have some questions answered. Yeah.
Vladimir, thank you so much for all of your insights as well as those wonderful images that we have, and we will open it up to some question. We'll have a little bit of time for questions in a moment, but let me begin with one question that occurred to me even before you started talking. And when you see a Roerich painting, you immediately recognize it as a Roerich painting. At least for me, they are immediately recognizable as part of his body of work. And part of it has to do, I think, with the light and the way in which he not only paints the Himalaya on a Himalayan scale, but he's also painting the Himalayan with a Himalayan light, I would say. And you were talking earlier about the medium that he used, the tempera, and how that gives those paintings a particular quality. The other part of the question is the way in which he clearly is a modern artist, and there's this element of abstraction to those paintings, the Kanchenjunga paintings, certainly, that almost anticipates Cubism in some way, because he breaks it into things. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
I spoke to a few Indian art historians, and some of them found that in the Roerich landscapes, in the lines he's using, and he used elements of Cubism, which is also initially surprised because Roerich still follows a realistic school of art. But you find definitely this modernistic feature as a Cubism, and the lines and structure, a geometrical structure of the mountain landscape. When I was in Spitip, so you could see sometimes the mountains like it's being sliced. Of course, it's not snow peaks, but the gorge of the mountain or the part of the landscape, and you see how the land was formed millions years ago, and that has a certain texture, characteristics, the line structure. So, and Roerich was very particular. He was very precise. As I mentioned, you could make a map of travel through Central Asia just taking his paintings very accurately and almost like with photographic quality. So,
perhaps that's why the British authorities were anxious.
Absolutely.
He was a Russian spy as a part of the Great Game.
In fact, in Chinese Turkestan, he was denied. The Chinese authorities have prohibited him to take any pictures and also to paint. Okay. He was not allowed. For 1 month, he couldn't do any sketch.
No, I mean, the whole story of the Great Game and all of the suspicions towards Russia is very much a part of his thing. And I always love to remind people that the Great Game is a sort of pedestrian phrase. The Russians had a much better phrase for it. They called it the Tournament of Shadows. And I think Roerich certainly wasn't part of that, but we can see elements of that in his work and in that accuracy there.
He was also, his expedition was taken not in a safe time, I should say. It's a time of unrest in Asia. The caravan was very frequently attacked by local gangsters, and nomads who would take advantage, to take hostages, but the expedition was well equipped. So.
You have a book that is going to be coming out very soon. I wonder if you'd like to just mention that.
I just will show the cover of the book. It's Indian Odyssey, Art, Spirit, and Legacy of Nicholas Roerich. The book should be coming very soon from the National Gallery. It's under the Ministry of Culture, and I believe it will be released soon in January, February. We're expecting. The book is ready. It's a first copy, and we're expecting the big number. I found there is a lack of information about his legacy, how as we discussed it earlier, that there are many materials which is missing. When I inquire during my work, tell me how the paintings came to that museum. So nobody could respond. I found only information in Allahabad Museum. Then I decided that we have to work with archival material in New York, in Russia, in India. Also, we to go into the libraries and find it piece by piece. Basically, it's a mosaic to create a story, how the collections were made, especially we are talking about pre-independence period. It's more than 100 years ago. So it's in a way, it's a challenge. But we bring a lot of unknown material. Many things are published, many archival photographs, many paintings, which never been shown before from private collection, are also part of this book.
Terrific. We'll look forward to that in February. I think we have time for just one quick question, and then our clock is running down. We're honored to have Dr. Karan Singh here, and perhaps we could give the microphone to him.
Thank you. Very interesting lecture. I visited the Roerich Museum in Moscow, of course. So my question is that in the Hindu tradition, Shiva is the predominant deity of the Himalayas. But I find that he's only interested in Buddhism, and Shiva is hardly portrayed, except in one very negative in avatar as Mahakaleshwar. Why is that? Is it because he was not interested in Hindu? How could Shiva not be shown when you are painting the Himalayas?
I think Roerich found another way of showing the Shiva, but in an invisible form. The creator behind the creation. The Himalayas are a manifestation of Shiva himself, the Himalayas.
I think, unfortunately, we'll have to end on that note, but I think that's a very appropriate note. There's a lot in Roerich's paintings that is invisible, and I think that that's a wonderful way in which you can punctuate your talk. Vladimir, thank you so much, and thank you all as an audience.